Hi, I'm Susan. Welcome to Tea and Games. The tea today is Builders Good Strong British Breakfast Tea. I really need to wake up this morning. We had an amazing gaming day on Easter. We played a lot of games and had a lot of fun with a friend of Robert's from work, Mark. He came over for an afternoon of gaming on Easter. Saturday before, we just gardened like mad out in the backyard, did gardening stuff. So Sunday was our only game day. We actually played pretty long. It pretty much took up the whole afternoon, right up to the beginning of what might be considered evening. Although daylight saving time, it's not like it's dark. So anyhow, Robert and I started with Welcome To before Mark arrived. We thought we could squeeze in a quick game because it doesn't take too terribly long. It just depends upon how fast you can think and turn over the cards, really. This is the collector's edition, which I've talked about, which I had to import from Canada because I can't find an American distributor for it. If it becomes available, like from an American publisher or a distributor, please put a comment below so other people will know, because I know there's a lot of people that are looking for this. This has all the expansions in it, and what we did was, not surprisingly, the spring expansion in which you're looking for eggs. Oh boy. Last year, the Easter Bunny just kicked our butts in this game. Let's see if I can sit it up here, if it will stay without falling. But this expansion is known as the Easter Egg Hunt. Here's what the boards look like. And in the collector's edition, the flip side of the board is the summer of the seasonal expansions. You're circling eggs, and this just gave me fits last year. And it almost got me this year. I mean, it really did. I'm looking at this thing, and you need to get for the planning card that I had, that there's one planning card for each of that subs in for the third planning card in the base game. And the one we had out, you needed to have an estate size 3 with 3 eggs in it. But here's the thing, when you circle the eggs, you can only use zeros, like in the 10, or 8s to circle the double eggs. So this double egg here, that would give you a lot of trouble being in the first position if you're doing it with an 8 or a 10, because then you need to try to fill in the rest of those with numbers greater than 8 or 10, of which there really aren't many, because I think it only goes up to 15. Well, I started on the bottom row, and I just wasn't thinking about that whole double egg circling thing. So I was going to do these estates on the bottom with the double eggs. And then I almost got them completed because I was really leaning into that. I was going for that first. And then I realized I'm only circling 1 egg because there's no double thing for the number. And I'm going like, oh, I have totally messed this up. I'm going to tank again this year. But then I had enough time. I was able to, because there was another one that needed size 3 estates. So I was able to change my strategy in mid-game and go for this one here and this one here. Which this one's about, well, you still have to go pretty, but it's a shorter street, so filling out beyond that, if you go with an 8 for the double, is going to be less horrific than if you do it with one of the lower streets. So I managed to pull it off, and I actually managed to win this game, and I did pretty well. We were in final scoring when Mark rang the doorbell. One of the things I found interesting in the collector's edition, they have a whole separate book for the expansions, because there are so very many expansions packed into this. And there's a thing in here where it talks about, it has a list, and of course I cannot find it now, that lists the different expansions, and basically like easy, medium, hard, that kind of thing. It basically rates the expansions as to their difficulty level. The Easter expansion, the egg hunt, that is actually listed as one of their easier ones, but Robert and I had trouble with it last year. Robert was still having trouble with it this year. So I'm just not sure I trust their way of rating it, because the people that are deciding which ones are easier or harder are, you know, like the designers and the publishers, and they know this game so very well. I would imagine pretty much anything seems easier to them because they already know the strategies and they know what they can get away with. Whereas, as I pointed out in the other video, we don't actually know the card distribution for this game because they changed the number of cards in the deck, and the player's aid no longer lists how many of each numbered card there is. So yeah, we were kind of flying blind this year. So the first game we played with Mark was Bunny Kingdom. Oh, the lid is on wonky. It's sideways. I just noticed that. This is, I mean, of course, it's Easter Bunny, so we had to play Bunny Kingdom on Easter. We really did, just like we had to play the spring expansion of Welcome To. Mark had not played this game. He wasn't familiar with it, but it is a fairly easy teach. And he did not have any trouble picking it up. He did not have any trouble picking it up to the extent that he won by 30 points. So, yeah, not a problem. I don't know if I would call this an entry-level game. It is area control, which can be a little tricky. I'm not sure I would drop somebody into Bunny Kingdom as their very first modern board game. It's for somebody that has any experience playing board games, it's going to be okay. It's fairly simple and straightforward. It's got a beautiful board, actually very spring-like in colors. And you are bunny feudal lords, and you are drafting cards and placing out cities and resources once you control the lands, and it's got very cute artwork. Controlling areas. You can't, it's less mean than some area control games in the sense that there's no combat and you're not going to be taking territories from someone. Once you draft a card that says you got that territory, you got it. And the cards have like grids, and they have other cards for extra points and objectives. There's only one case in which territory can change hands, and that is they have a special type of token that's considered a building. It's called a camp, and you can place camp cards on territories that you don't control as if they are cities, and they will count as territories that you're controlled at the end of round scoring, and at the end of game scoring too, if there's still a camp out there. So, but if somebody draws the card that has the grid reference where you put your camp, then they can claim the camp. But I mean, if you draw that card, then you just like make it permanent, remove the little temporary camp marker. But that's the only, so I mean, you can use camps, you just really can't depend upon them. But it's less combative than a number of other area control games. The player colors are red, yellow, pink, and black. And the cities look like little sand castles with little towers. And the towers are your point multipliers. I've talked about Bunny Kingdom before. I won't spend a huge amount of time on it, except to talk about what it is like to play it at 3 players. Because Robert and I have only played it at 2, and And God bless commenters, because that's how I found out that on BGG somebody had posted an alternate 2-player draft thing, because the 2-player drafting for this game, it plays up to 4. The 2-player drafting for this game is really clunky and does not serve the game well or the players well. It's But there is an alternate 2-player drafting on BGG that is very smooth. It's very similar to the way you draft in a 3- and 4-player game, and it plays very, very well, and that's what we typically use. But Easter, we had a chance to play it with 3 players, and whoa, mama, that board was full of bunnies. I will put a little insert up here so you can see what the final board looked like. You may notice there are a couple of spots that should have bunnies on them that do not, and that's because I was just so excited at finally getting those 2 mountain territories, because I drafted luxury resources very early in the game and then just could not get the mountain places that I needed to place them out. And I was so excited about finally getting the mountains that I forgot to put the bunnies out. I just placed the little tiles for the resources and everything. But I had the bunnies, and I could have legally put them out and should have put them out, but I didn't. So there were a couple of tiny errors in the board, but otherwise it played okay. And the board being that full, and I looked at that board afterwards and I'm thinking, like, how would this work with 4 players? I mean, with the max player count, because there were not a huge number of territories that were not, because I mean, there were no big chunks, but there were little squares here and there that you can see between the bunnies where a 4th player could have placed territory. And the only thing I can think of is that with a 4-player game, and I mean, we didn't go all the way through the deck. We just came close to going all the way through the deck. I think it's a huge deck. It's one of those games that the deck is so big that in the box, the deck is divided into 2 and has 2 separate full slots for it. But I think with a 4-player game, what you should do strategically is not take too many parchment cards until the end of the draft cycle for the round, because there were good parchment cards. And I mean, the first times around for 3 players, it takes like 3 rounds for us to see all of the cards that are in that round. And of course, people are going to be pulling cards out of that pool as everybody drafts their cards. And you play 2 cards each time, which means that for a 3-player game, you play a total of 12 cards. For a 4-player game, it would be 10. That's a lot of cards. There's a lot of simultaneous action. The board fills up very, very quickly. Gameplay is super smooth. But I think strategically, you should maybe not lean into getting the parchments too early. I mean, at the end of the draft, whatever anybody else doesn't take on that last round is what you get. And we ended up with like bunnies just hanging out in weird places, surrounded by territories they'd never be able to claim, kind of thing. But so that happened to all of us. But I mean, I voluntarily took some parchments in the early cycles of the drafting because they were really good parchments. Whereas I think in a 4-player game, you should really lean into claiming territory cards and then just kind of pick up parchments here and there along the way as they become available and you start running out of really good territories to get. And I mean, there were times where I had to make tough choices between good territories and hope that those territories came back around again during the drafting process. But yeah, it was a pretty tight board, and we had a huge amount of fun playing it. Mark enjoyed it, and like I said, he did really well at it. I mean, that's pretty good. I guess we did a good teach, and it's a good game if somebody can sit down and win it the first time. Mind you, Robert and I are not exactly masters of the Bunny Kingdom. We've played it a few times now, but because we got it, I think, last fall, and we played it a bunch of times when we first got it. But we haven't played it recently. But yeah, this is a game we like very, very, very much. And Mark liked it too. After that big game, we played, and we did have pizza somewhere around there. I think it was between between Bunny Kingdom and the other games. I pulled out Soda Smugglers. This plays 3 to 8 people. We'll get to that in a minute. And it was on my unplayed game shelf. I became aware of this game because the Watch It Played crew played this game. It's from Bitewing Games. They played this game during their party in PEI back this past summer. I think it was summer. Their 2-day live stream. So it just looked like a huge amount of fun. So I thought, I dithered over it because I thought, 3 to 8, we're going to just have a hard time making the numbers to play this. But if we ever do, it looks like a lot of fun. So I dithered about it. I didn't just like immediately go out and get it. Months passed. And then I got it, and then more months passed as it sat on my shelf because we mostly play at 2 players. Well, we got it out at 3. This game is not a 3-player game. This player count is very, very misleading. By the way, this is a Reiner Knizia game, so the design is solid. It's a good game. You know, if it's a Reiner Knizia game, it's going to be a good design. So, but it's not a 3-player game. We played it at 3. It is a 3-player game in the sense that the game can be played without, like, jumping through a lot of hoops to change rules or anything. The game can be played at 3. But if I lived in a universe where all board games were played at 3 players, that was just the standard number for board games in this alternate universe. You must have 3 players, no more, no less, to play a board game. If I lived in a 3-player board game universe, this game wouldn't stay in my collection. Because you can play it at 3, but it's really just falls flat. I mean, really flat. Flat like soda that's been sitting out for too long. I think it probably needs a minimum of 4, even though you're only using 3 of the tokens. One take bribe, 1 inspect, 1 arrest token for, it's a little card game, and it's a lot of fun. And if you falsely arrest someone for smuggling soda, you must sincerely apologize to them and also give them 2 of your bottle caps. So, so that adds a little bit of extra unexpected fun to the gameplay. But yeah, it's a very flat game at 3. I would recommend at 3 players. 3-player is good for you to just learn the game, see how it plays, get a feel for it, and get the teeny tiniest glimmer of how much fun this game would be at a higher player count. Because I do think after playing this, because I could get glimpses of the great game that it is, and I saw people play it during the live stream. And so, I mean, I could get glimpses of the potential for fun for this game. And if I can get enough players, this game is going to be a wild amount of fun, I think. But at 3 players, it was just a game and not a terribly good one. It was just, okay. It was playable. We did it. It was kind of fun. Cute concept. But yeah, and the whole thing about it really needs more than 3. I do have a number of games, many of them unplayed, that play larger player counts. And if at some point I decide, well, you know, we just don't play games at high player counts enough to have this many games for those higher player count numbers, if at some point I decide to cull games, I'm not sure that I'm going to hang on to this one simply because there are some other games that can be played like at 5. Sorry, I accidentally put my elbow on the clicker and turned off the camera. There are some other games that can be played at 5, 6, 7, 8 players that can also be played and have a good time playing at 3. So this game is kind of, I mean, if it's on your shelf with a bunch of party games, it's a little bit at a disadvantage for the lower numbers because it kind of falls flat at 3. We had a good time playing it, but basically we could just see that it wasn't. And I left out the board in the rule book for Bunny Kingdom. Yes, that's my thing. I'm always leaving something out of the box I have to put back in. So let me see. I won Soda Smugglers. And that was the game that we were all playing for the very first time. And then after that, we introduced Mark to Village Rails, which is a lot of game in a very small box. I would be hard-pressed to point to something else on my shelf that has this much game in a box this small. This is a game you can truly travel with that is nevertheless kind of a full-size game. Maybe the Tiny Epic games would qualify as a lot of game in a small box, but if you're not into Tiny Epic, Village Rails, train game. Let me set this up here. We introduced Mark to Village Rails, and he won Village Rails too. But I did pretty well in the game. It plays better at 3 than 2. It plays okay at 2. Sometimes, depending upon the cards and the way they're dealt out, the journey cards will stack up with a lot of coins because there's one right there at the front that neither Robert nor I want. And I noticed in the 3-player game, we didn't have cards that spent the entire game just stacking up coin because nobody wanted them. Because with 3 players, not only do the track cards cycle faster, but the journey cards cycle faster because there's going to be more people with more rail lines, with more different criteria that may possibly want those. 3 is a nice player count for this game. Like I said, Robert and I are happy with it, playing it at 2 most of the time. Every now and then we'll get a little stuck on a journey card. But on the other hand, you can always just take it, slap it on a route that's got nothing and might not ever have anything and just take the money. So there are advantages to that too. And Mark also liked this game a lot. It can be a little thinky as you're trying to figure things out, and the way the lines twist, it's easy to kind of get off track and go, oh wait, that signal isn't on that line. But we had a lot of fun on Easter afternoon playing games with Mark. This is the second time that he's been over for games. The other time we had another person too, so it was a 4-player game. So, I mean, this was also kind of a rare occasion of us playing a 3-player game. I think we get a 3-player game maybe once a year, and we get a 4-player game maybe twice a year, so, but yeah, we had a huge amount of fun. I do like Soda Smugglers, but this is not a 3-player game. A 3-player is okay for learning it, and for seeing how much fun it could possibly be if you actually had a good player count for it. But yeah, we're going to try to, I think I'm going to, now that I've gotten a play in of this, I'm going to try to prioritize getting this game into the queue the next time we get together with the family maybe, because then we will again see how it plays with more players. And of course, I have talked about Village Rails and Bunny Kingdom in other videos because we like both of these games a huge amount. And y'all know how much I like Welcome To, so much so that I tracked down a hard-to-find a collector's edition. It shouldn't be hard to find, though. Just one of those vagaries of distribution. But that's what we played this weekend. So tell me, on Easter, did you just hunt eggs? And if so, were they like, welcome to eggs? Or did you hunt eggs in the yard? Or did you come in and play a few board games? And do you have any games in your collection that you think are especially suited for Easter? I know there are some religious themed games out there that would be suitable for Easter, and I don't think Bunny Kingdom is the only bunny themed game out there, because bunnies are cute and people like cute games. But we had a great time, and I've had a great time sitting around the table chatting with you about it. I'm glad y'all joined me. Welcome to new subscribers, of which we are still getting new subscribers. That's very nice. And I will see y'all next time around the table, and I don't even know what we're going to play next. I can't even give you a sneak peek. We'll see you then around the table.